Hello, I'm Lieutenant Colonel Joe Long, Director of Operations for the Illinois Wing from Chicago. Today, we're going to give you a virtual tour of 3 of the Illinois Wing aircraft, the 172, the Cessna 182, and the Gippsland GA-8. Alright, the first airplane we're going to talk about is the Cessna 172. It's 180 horsepower, one of our primary trainers for cadets. So the wing is what produces the lift. On the back of the wing, on the outboard side, we've got ailerons. And on the inboard side, we have flaps. The ailerons are what rolls the airplane in a turn, and the flaps, those come down, and we'll show you later, those in action on the GA-8. Those increase lift, but also increase drag to let us fly a steeper, slower approach into airports. And we've got a number of antennas on top for the communication with ATC, air traffic control, towers, things like that. We've also, all our airplanes have global positioning systems, or GPS, and this antenna here is for the emergency locating transmitter, or the ELT. On the bottom, this aircraft is a little older, so it has an older type of electronic direction finding to find downed airplanes, to find an ELT when it's going off. Let's take a quick look in the cockpit and see the layout of the instrument. All right, here we are in the cockpit of the 172. We got our airspeed indicator, tells us how fast we're going. Our attitude indicator tells us our orientation level to the ground. Our altimeter, which tells us how high we are. Down below that, we have our vertical speed indicator. Tells us how fast we're climbing or descending. Next, we have our directional gyro, or compass, and that tells us the direction we're heading. Over here, our turn and slip indicator tells us if we're flying level and if we're in a turn, how fast we're turning. Engine instruments are over here. Tells us how much fuel we have. Standard clock. Suction gauge, which runs these instruments, tells us that we have enough air running through the vacuum system. And then we've got our oil temperature, which tells us how hot the engine is, and the pressure to make sure that we have enough oil in the system. And down below that, not sure if you can see it, but we have our RPM, or basically tells us how fast the engine and the propeller is turning. Moving over here, we have our 3 navigation instruments. Tells us if we're on course from either our GPS unit or our radio navigation, which is over here. Here's how we tune in our radios, what radio we're talking to or talking on. It's our GPS, tells us our position, and if we plug in a flight plan, it tells us if we're on course or not, in addition to our navigation instruments. Down below that, we have our communication radios and navigation radios. Radio stations on the ground that we can tune in a frequency, and it tells us the direction they're at, and if we're tracking a course, whether we're on course or not. So we have our communication radio number 1 and nav 1, communication radio number 2, and navigation radio number 2. Over here, we've got our cap radio, and that allows us to talk to our mission base or ground teams that we're working with to find a target. Down below that is our direction finding equipment. This is an old school one, and basically we center these needles to find the direction of an emergency locating transmitter that we're trying to find. So that's about it on the 172, very simple. Let's move over to the 182. Here we have our Cessna 182 Skylane. One of the biggest differences that jumps out at folks right away is this has a 3-bladed prop. It's turned by a bigger engine. This is 210 horsepower. This airplane is about 20% heavier than the 172. Requires a high performance rating in the aircraft, and this is our primary search and rescue aircraft. Okay, in the 182, like I mentioned before, it's a bigger engine, 210 horsepower. We've got more controls, whereas in the 172, we just have the throttle and the mixture. In the 182, and any variable pitch aircraft, we have a propeller control. Here we're looking at the tire of the GA8 Airvan. This is an Australian designed aircraft built to go fly in the outback of Australia. These big tires can make even the hardest landings seem soft. Okay, moving to the aft section of the GA8 Airvan, it's a bigger airplane. It can seat 6 passengers, and we've got a huge cargo door that slides open. We have 6 seats. This one is configured with 5 seats, and they can be removed for cargo or, in this configuration, to carry passengers. We've got huge side windows, which makes it the ideal aircraft for aerial photography and looking for downed aircraft. All right, here we are in the cockpit of the GA8 Airvan. One of the biggest differences from the other aircraft you see is that we have a glass cockpit. We've got all our indicators from airspeed, attitude indicator, altimeter, as well as our directional gyro, and it inputs navigation information to tell us if we're on course or off course. All the information from all those 6-packs is right in there. Over here, again, we have our Becker, our Doppler digital indicator to find our ELTs and find our target we're looking for. Another altimeter for backup, and our cap radio, which allows us to talk to our mission base, our ground teams, and we can plug in Air Force frequencies as well. And because the GA8 Airvan is a bigger airplane with a more powerful engine, we've got a different type of throttle quadrant, same as the 182, but we've got our throttle, our prop controls, and our mixture control. In addition to that, we've got an overhead switch panel. We've got our power, lights, and circuit protection for the airplane. It's a lot of fun to fly, and we could take it into small airports as well as the big ones.
What makes flying with the Civil Air Patrol different than flying with your flying club?
With Civil Air Patrol, we've got a reason to fly. You're flying with other people and with a crew. It's a way to give back to the community, using your pilot skills to give back to the community. It's very rewarding.